Halftime show here on the game. Tyler Head and Terry Ford. Well, when Terry Ford actually comes down to the Herndon Chevrolet studio, it'll be myself and Terry Ford along with you on this Thursday morning. There I go again. It is now Thursday afternoon. Welcome into the Halftime Show. However you're listening, whether it be on the radio, on the 107.5 The Game app, or streaming on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass, we are happy to have you. What a interesting 12 hours it's been in the news cycle as far as Gamecock athletics go. Obviously, last night, men's basketball team going on the road to Baton Rouge, and the less said about that game, the better, I guess. 40-point loss, 101-61, in what is perhaps one of the toughest road environments in the SEC. I don't think there was a shock if you would have told anybody yesterday, hey, South Carolina's going to go in there and they're going to lose to Auburn. It's like, well, everybody's lost to Auburn in Neville Arena this season. Even going back to last year, 16-game winning streak. Tough place to play. Obviously, a team that just generally plays better at home for whatever reason that may be. So I don't think it's the shock that South Carolina went in there and lost that game, ending its win streak that went all the way back to the loss against Georgia the first time that they played them. It's just how they lost that game and by the margin that they did, because this is one thing to lose, 5, 8, 10 points in a fairly competitive game all the way through. It's another thing to lose by 40 where, halfway through the second half, if you tuned out, you really didn't miss much because, okay, well, I don't see South Carolina mounting some kind of unbelievable comeback in these final couple of minutes to be able to try and get back in this game. So it's unfortunate from that standpoint, but at the same time, it's one of those things where you hate this be the reason, but to define it this way, but sometimes basketball just happens. Sometimes the team that you play makes everything, and sometimes you don't make anything. And it's not always mechanics, it's not always coaching or anything like that. Sometimes the basketball gods just smile down on one team and frown on another. And that's kind of what it seems like happened last night, where Auburn, who's not really known as this wow, oh my God, blow you away three-point shooting team, they went 12 of 20 from beyond the arc last night. 60% shooting threes. They had not shot better than 50% this entire season. Johni Broome, who, very good player, very well-rounded player for Auburn, one of the best that they have on the team, one of the best in the SEC. He's not really a consistent three-point shooter. In fact, in his entire college career, which has been around for, 4 years now, he had never made 4 three-pointers in a single game until last night when he went 4 of 5. Everything that they were doing was just working. And on the flip side of that, nothing South Carolina was trying seemed to work at all. I mean, even basic layups, the routine stuff that South Carolina usually nails to a T just wasn't falling. And again, that's not, I don't think you point that at coaching or effort or anything like that. Sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way. And I think that's what happened to South Carolina last night. Now, all that being said, and we'll get to some thoughts from Lamont Paris last night and what he had to say in the postgame. I don't think anybody is too put off by this. I don't think this is something that's going to derail South Carolina's season where they're, going back to Columbia last night or this morning, whenever they left Auburn with their, with their head in their hand saying, oh no, everything's ruined and what are we going to do and all that kind of stuff. I think they just look at that as, hey, we had a bad night. Our shots weren't falling. Auburn, very good team, tough road environment. We still got goals in front of us. We still got things that we can accomplish that are still within reach, including, technically speaking, the SEC regular season championship. Yes, you came into last night tied with Alabama. Now, this one does put you a game behind now, but there's still a handful of games left to go in the SEC. There's no reason that South Carolina can't stay in that mix. You do have tough games. Got to play Tennessee again. Got to play A&M. That's not easy. But it's entirely possible for South Carolina to handle those teams and, again, still be in the mix for that SEC regular season crown when the season does conclude here in a couple weeks. But, listening to Paris last night, and in fact, we'll get some of his thoughts right here, he just kind of put it bluntly that last night was an example of a game that, sometimes you just go into a place and find it hard to win.
I mean, it was honestly, it was one of those days that was going to potentially be really hard to win no matter what you did, just with how they shot the ball, honestly. But certainly there was some responsibility on our end that contributed to some of those things. But then there was also a lot of wacky plays. There's a loose ball. We dive on it in front of our bench. We don't come up with it. It scores into their hand, and they splash three.
Yeah, they had a few of those.
I mean, it was multiple times like that. So, honestly, it's probably better that, I don't think we have the type of team that will have a hard time picking up the pieces. I don't think we're built that way. But it is easier to turn the page, I think, when you have this kind of performance, right? They're not a 40-point better than us team. No one has been that, right? But so I think they'll be able to move forward and say, hey, it's one of them days. I mean, you got a guy that goes 1 for 3 from the free throw line with one air ball and another one that barely hits the rim, but he goes 4 for 5 from the three-point line, right? There was a lot going on.
We talk so much about the veteran presence this team has, where outside of Colin Murray-Boyles, your entire starting five is comprised of guys that have just been around the game of college basketball for a long time and have a lot of experience under their belts. And I guarantee if you look at all those guys' resume, they all experienced some kind of pretty lopsided loss at one point or another during their careers. And with that, that's the experience of how to handle that loss. That's the experience of how to move on to whatever your next opponent is and not let that loss linger. Because that's the thing about, college basketball, especially with the way the schedules are like this week, where you have a game on Wednesday and then you have another game on Saturday. So you're talking, 72 hours, I guess, turning around. Not a whole lot of time between when one game ends and when another begins, even less than 72 hours, I guess, for, your team between those two games. So not letting Auburn, quote unquote, beat you twice. That's the cliche that we all love to use, but it's a real thing, because if you're a team that's young and inexperienced and lets the emotions get the best of you, then you can be sitting and pouting about that for 2 days, to where you get set to take on LSU on Saturday, a team that on paper South Carolina should have no problem taking care of in Colonial Life Arena. You let the emotions of Wednesday night linger for a couple days. Well, guess what? LSU can come in here and surprise you. And then when you look at, your resume at the end of the season, okay, well, the loss to Auburn isn't that bad, all things considered, because they're a team that's also high in the net. They're a team that is expected to have a deep run in the NCAA tournament. It doesn't really ding you a whole lot. But you lose to LSU, a team that's been pretty disastrous for the most part in the SEC this season. That does knock you down a couple pegs. That does affect what your seeding looks like and all that kind of stuff that South Carolina is certainly trying to keep intact. So I think, again, based on the comments that we heard from Paris and the players last night, I think they'll be able to refocus and look ahead to what is on the horizon with LSU coming in on Saturday without too much of an issue. If they get off to a slow start in the first couple minutes, that's not a new thing. We've seen them do that in several games so far this season, so don't be freaked out if that happens. LSU jumps out to a 10-5 lead or something like that in the first couple minutes. That's okay. Now, if they're down by 20 points at halftime or something like that on Saturday, then there's an area to be concerned, because that should not be what happens against a team like LSU. Because, again, South Carolina is so talented across the board. You have so many guys that can score in so many different ways, so many guys that can contribute in so many different ways, that unfortunately, just with the game of basketball and the sheer amount of games that you play over the course of a season, you're going to run into games like last night where things just aren't going away. Your shots aren't falling, your percentages aren't as good, and again, it doesn't tell the story of the entire season, but it can certainly hurt you if you let that loss hang around and linger inside your mind for longer than it should. The goal would be, when you got on the bus last night, that it was already behind you and you're already setting your sights ahead to what Auburn is, what LSU is bringing to the table coming up on Saturday. Looking at some of the numbers last night, and again, it's a blowout loss, so you can't glean too much from the statistics in terms of trying to create positives necessarily. But Colin Murray-Boyles, follows up his 31-point performance from Saturday with a 19-pointer. Last night, 7 rebounds, so good numbers there. Meechie Johnson kind of got back on his horse a little bit after having some struggles as of late. 22 points, 2 of 6 from 3, grabbed 7 rebounds himself. And then BJ Mack Getting 14 points as well. So kind of keeping in line with what those guys have done from a number standpoint. So, it was them that scored the vast majority of the points. Doing the quick math here, I believe is that 55 points, I think, between these those two guys as far as the scoring went for last night. Yeah, there'd be 55 points between those two guys. You only had the 1 point from Davis, 4 from Cooper, and then 1 point from Stephen Clark off the bench is your other scoring for last night. So, again, it's one that Lamont Paris said you flush away, put behind you, focus on the next task ahead. Again, you can still chase the SEC regular season crown. You can still, be looked at as one of the top seeds in the NCAA tournament and all that good stuff. So nothing's really changed, even though last night may have been hard to watch. And if you turned it off relatively early, I certainly don't blame you, because when you're down by 22 at halftime, there's that small gleam of optimism, like, hey, well, if LSU can score 50 points in the first half, South Carolina can do the same in the second half. And then you get rolling in the second half and quickly realize, well, that's not going to be the case in this game, as LSU just kept on rolling from where they were at the at the half. But hey, these things happen. It's another game. Flush it away. Focus on your next task at hand, which is LSU coming up on Saturday, and try and get yourself back on track to close out this regular season on a high note for what's been a great season so far. Again, only 21-4, so only 4 losses where we're sitting in the middle of February. So it could be a lot worse. There are a lot of programs around the country that would be dying to have the record and the reputation that South Carolina has as of right now for this individual season. Continue to talk about this. Also, the news of Sean Elliott joining South Carolina staff as the new tight ends coach after leaving behind his post as the head coach out at Georgia State here only a couple of hours ago. So plenty to talk to about that as well. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford along with you here on the game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach. The 107.5 The Game app. You can, as always, stream us on the Game TV. In fact, not only can you stream us on the Game TV, you can watch us all day long, subscribe to us, hit that bell icon to stay notified as well. So anytime we're doing a live or we have an upload on our YouTube channel, you can be notified for it. And also, that might get you some tickets to some baseball games a little bit later on in the season. Stay tuned for more details on that. Again, we'll continue our conversation about basketball and look into the new coaching hire as well as today's halftime show rolls on here on the Game.
Hi there. Let's talk about the Nest on Gadsden right here in Columbia. Look, if you're looking to update your kitchen, for an example, you want new appliances, refrigerator, stove, ovens, whatever. Or maybe you just want to change the lighting in your house. Maybe you need a new bathtub, shower, some kind of combination there. Fixtures, whatever the case. The Nest on Gadsden. This is very simple. They will personalize it to what you need. Price, you got a budget, doesn't matter what budget, they'll figure it out. They will set it up for you. You're looking for a specific look, they can help you out with that as well. The Nest on Gadsden. It's very simple. They have 70 years of experience to help you out in all those different departments. It's the Nest on Gadsden. Give them a call, check the website. They'll hook you up and take care of you.
Inbounds Dugasuk. He will walk it across the timeline and let the clock wind out. 5 seconds left. 2-1, and that will do it. The Gamecocks see their 7-game win streak snap as they fall to Auburn, 101-61. The Tigers keep their winning streak alive. That's 16 in a row here at Neville Arena and 7 in a row against the Gamecocks. They could do no wrong tonight.
Truer words never been spoken. Derek Scott, Auburn could do no wrong. That's really it. To be honest with you, halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on the game. It's just one of those nights, Tyler. Yep. Some nights you just throw your hands in the air and go, it's your night. And that's what happened. I mean, Auburn, 60% from the floor overall, 60% from 2, 60% from 3, almost 90% from the line. I mean, they did not miss. And they started 2 of 7. That's the other interesting part. So they probably shot, 70-some% after the start when South Carolina was up 9-4. Just, and Lamont Paris post-game, and you and I were talking about it earlier, and I think you talked about it during your show. After the game, unlike the Georgia loss or the Alabama loss, Lamont just went, no we can do tonight, man. That just, some nights it's just the other guy's night. Right. He was talking about Johnny Brahm, airballed a free throw, and the dude went 4 or 5 from 3.
Johnny Brahm's been playing college basketball for, 4 or 5 years now? Has been around forever. He had never made 4 3-pointers in his entire college career prior to last night.
No.
If that's not a microcosm for how last night's game went, I don't know what is.
I mean, he's a 34% three-point shooter, which means he's about average.
Right.
4 out of 5 is not average. You're popping 80% of your threes. Jalen Williams, 39% three-point shooter, which is above average, but my man last night was 5 of 7 from distance. That's just not going to happen. Auburn, who shoots about a little bit under 33%, like 32.7% from 3, which is below average as a team. You know what they did last night? 60%.
They had not shot over 50% from 3 this entire season.
So they had a night. You give them credit, you tip your cap, and you move forward. You flush it, you wash it. You do the old school, take the film outside and burn it, whatever. Sure. I mean, I'm sure there's some things Lamont wants to go over, saying, okay, we can't do this, that, this, or that. But at the end of the day, I mean, you just ran into a buzzsaw. That's all.
And I think it's important to note, I talked to Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central in the 9 o'clock hour, and we don't get to always see the same media availability when it comes to away games as we do for home games. But he said in talking to the players after the game, they almost had a similar mindset to what the Lamont Paris had. Like, yeah, tonight sucks. Obviously didn't want to come in here and get beat by 40 points, but hey, it happens. It's one of those nights where the basketball gods just smiled on Auburn and frowned on us, and we're moving on to the next thing. Got LSU coming up on Saturday, and we're going to focus on that. So, and again, that goes back to the veteran presence this team has and all the experience, in your starting 5, guys coming off the bench like Stephen Clark, and just having guys that have been around basketball for a long time. I guarantee you, when you look at Talon Cooper, Michi Johnson, BJ Mack, I guarantee you they've all been a part of some kind of massive blowout loss prior to their time at South Carolina. So they get it. They understand not to linger on it, to move on and get ready for your next challenge. Because, again, last thing you want to do is let Auburn beat you twice.
Right. And that's the thing. That's what he said, last night. It was like, he just like, look, we'll wash this thing and move on. We're a veteran team. We're mature. We're going to be fine. And really, you saw it coming off the Alabama game. Remember, that second half, we forget something. The second half of the Alabama game was just like last night.
Yeah.
And really worse in some ways, because the team really lost their composure in the second half of Tuscaloosa. And they fell into playing Alabama's game. Last night, you just got run over.
Yeah.
And I think you bounce back from that much easier. And even Lamont said it last night. Look, in some ways, if you're going to get beat, you get beat like this where you go, this wasn't our night. Now, again, can South Carolina, there's some things you take from last night? Sure. Because, South Carolina did have moments last night where it looked like they did kind of lose their composure in a crazy, hostile atmosphere. And that's something you don't want to have happen. That happened a little bit in the second half in Tuscaloosa. Got down big and things just kind of unraveled. Is that a thing? Well, I don't know, because it's only been twice this year you've seen it, and this team's been really good. And they went to Knoxville and won. The other thing is, defensively, Yeah, there's some things you might, again, want to take care of, but at the end of the day, Auburn was making everything, whether you were guarding them or not. And offensively, Auburn's defensive pressure did seem to bother you, getting into your stuff, finishing plays, just running your offense. So, yeah, there's some things Lamont Paris is going to sit down and go, okay, guys, this, and this. That's it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, in the overall big picture, it was just their night. God love them. And they are, Auburn at home to begin with is a beast like you're not going to face. They're phenomenal. It might be the best home court advantage right now in college basketball.
I want to know who is responsible for giving them this misfortune, this fortune not only in basketball, but in football as well. Weird things happen, Jordan Hare. Alabama and Georgia, two of the best teams in the country, went in there and barely escaped with victories this past season. Basketball, again, undefeated this year, winning streak goes all the way back to last season. There's just some kind of voodoo out there on the plains that I can't explain, and I don't know, maybe they carried some kind of ancient medicine woman up a mountain years and years ago that blessed them with this good fortune, but you can't deny that it's not just coincidence at this point.
Well, they're so good on their home court. They're just, I mean, they've lost 2 games in 3 years.
Right.
They just don't get beat there, and I think they have a medicine woman locked up in the upper level of the arena. They're just really good at home. And here's the thing: away from home, they're 3-4. They're 3-4 in road games. They went to Florida and got punked.
Yeah.
They lost to Appalachian State, who's a good mid-major, but they went to Appalachian State and got beat. They went to Mississippi State and got beat. You know, they're a whole different basketball team away from home. They went to Alabama and lost 2. And in those games, I'll give you an idea. Last night they shot 60% from 3, right?
Yes.
Away from home in their 4 losses, they were 17 of 93 from 3. That equals 18%, my friend.
Well,
and here's the thing: they're really good. But if you look at their home and road, unless you're playing the NCAA tournament in their barn,
which you don't,
there's a question mark about Auburn. As good as Bruce Pearl is as a tournament coach, as talented as Auburn is, you take them out of the cozy confines of their home court.
Sure. Well,
they're not the same.
The state of Alabama has not been good to South Carolina this year. That's where their 2 worst losses have come. Thankfully, there's no Birmingham regional for the NCAA tournament.
Yep, exactly. So, look, give Auburn their props last night. They were phenomenal. And Auburn's a good team. They're not that good. Another thing Lamont Paris said, they're not 40 points better than us, and they're not. But last night they were fantastic. Let's hear Bruce Pearl real quick on talking about how they beat South Carolina, cut 14, Tyler.
They play really well together. Obviously, they've been holding teams in the league to 65 points. And you know, tonight, after a slow start, we made shots and play with great freedom. I think the other thing too was important was we also disrupted them offensively. We turned them over. We were aggressive and made plenty of offense out of our defense. And you know, we compliment South Carolina. I told you before the game, that's the SEC Coach of the Year right there. To be picked last in the league and to be he's 20-4 right now, and those kids have done a phenomenal job. We talked a little before the game. I told Lamont, you know, sometimes it takes a little losing. And you know, he came in last year, and you know, it was his first year, and didn't go as kind of go as it planned. But then you have their guys' attention, and they'll do anything to win. And that's how South Carolina's played all year long. They just played to win. Tonight we just played exceptionally well.
They did, and you know, this kind of loss again. You're not going to go undefeated the rest of the year. You're not going to win all your games. It's not going to happen.
Sure. You're
going to get losses. Now, a 40-point loss. Does it stink to get whooped like that? Sure, but like Lamont Paris, we're going to try to get to that cut maybe we have from Lamont. Sometimes it's better this is the kind of game it's easier to flush.
Yeah.
Because anybody that's plays sports, any sport at any level, and you're playing an opponent that everything they do is right. Everything they do works, and even if you do your best, you're helpless. You almost walk off the field, the court, the diamond, the rink, the pitch, and you go, it was their day.
It's if you lose on a buzzer beater, you lose by 5 points or whatever, then you're going back and saying, okay, well, if you did 1, 2, and 3 things differently, then this game ends up in our favor. But when you lose by 40, and again, your shots aren't falling and their shots are, it's just kind of one of those things. You're like, even if we drastically did these things differently in this game, probably doesn't end up changing the outcome. And that's just unfortunately how basketball is sometimes. And again, you have a short turnaround, less than 3 days before the next game, and you got to focus on LSU and, again, make sure Auburn doesn't beat you twice.
Yeah, anybody's played basketball. Sometimes you go up against a team, they make everything. I mean, how many times did Auburn fumble and kick the ball around last night, pick it back up and score?
Yeah, sometimes the ball bounces your way.
It's just, that's sometimes the game, and you just move forward. Doesn't change a lot. But you know what that game counted, Tyler? 1 loss.
That's right.
Counts as 1 loss. Lose by 1, lose by 101, counts as 1 loss. All right, we'll come back in here. We'll obviously continue this discussion. We'll hear from Lamont Paris here in a little bit, his post-game thoughts. Right now, let's switch gears. If you haven't heard, Shane Beamer added to the staff. We'll get to that next. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We're cooking this baby till 3 here on the game. All right, well, Shane Beamer has added to his staff. Sean Elliott, you might have heard of him. Sean Elliott coming back. Was obviously the head coach at Georgia State. Now coming back to be the tight ends coach / running game coordinator for the Gamecocks. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, halftime show here on the game. 803-404-6100, Firehouse Sub text line. Also, Love Chevy phone line. You want to hit us up. We'll have our Firehouse Sub text the hour in about 15 minutes. All right, so Elliott coming back is interesting. Just like Chip Kelly, you're a head coach. You decide to leave the head coaching position to go either take a coordinator job like Chip Kelly did at Ohio State or become the tight end coach, run game coordinator at South Carolina like Sean Elliott has. Now, Elliott, his career record, 41-44, went to, 4 or 5 bowl games at Georgia State. Mm-hmm. So he was a solid head coach at Georgia State. Better than solid. And he leaves to just jump on the coaching staff. Not even, run game coordinator, but not like an offensive coordinator. Just come in and be a run game coordinator, tight ends coach.
Right.
And your first thought is, man, dude, you were like a head coach. Whoa, what's up? But get used to this kind of stuff. You see the head coach at BC go to be defensive coordinator in the NFL. You see a head coach at UCLA become an offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Now you see the head coach at Georgia State become a tight end coach / run game coordinator at South Carolina.
Right.
And it's just being a head coach now, for lack of a better term, sucks in some ways. With the transfer portal, you're re-recruiting your guys, you're recruiting other guys, you're also doing the old-fashioned high school recruiting. You got to think of this. How's my NIL? Because I recruit now with NIL. How's my NIL situation at my school? All these things now have become a big deal. And some coaches, if they look at and look, I'm not saying this is the only reason that Sean Elliott would leave Georgia State, but maybe if you're Sean Elliott, you look around and say, okay, NIL situation here isn't what I would hope it would be. I'm going to lose guys in the portal that want to leave a group of 5 to go maybe play a Power 5. How am I going to get transfers in that will keep me being a bowl type of team?
Right. And Wes pulled a quote earlier this morning. We were talking about this from Sean Elliott at the Senior Bowl, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, whenever it was, where he specifically said, yeah, we're kind of getting killed by NIL at Georgia State. And when you think of where that program quite literally sits, it's in the city of Atlanta. You have Tech on the other side of the city. You have Georgia within the state as well. Obviously, you're so low on the pecking order, and it's not like Georgia State football has this long, rich history. They've been around since 2010, so it's got to be very hard to pull in the funds that you need to compete just at the Division I level in general. Obviously they're not going to be able to pull in what an SEC school or a Big Ten school, but just, you think about other schools that are in the Sun Belt Conference alone, in Appalachian State and Georgia Southern and places like that have a little bit more of a rich football history that could be a whole lot easier to kind of pull some of those funds in, where Georgia State just doesn't have that. So I could see how that could be a little bit of a losing effort. And, when you think about everything that's on the plate of a head coach in today's college football, this unfortunately seems to be kind of the norm of what we're probably going to see for years to come unless things change.
And by the way, your fan base, your boosters, your alumni, they don't want to hear it.
Right.
They don't care.
Yeah.
You know what they say? You're getting paid to win, dude.
Sure.
And again, there's going to be certain coaching situations where you look around going, I can't win here. Now, let's talk. We went back and brought this up with Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly, this isn't Oregon Chip. This is 8-9 win Chip, and that was really his best years at UCLA.
Right.
So Chip Kelly wasn't what UCLA was hoping when they gave him the gig. So Chip Kelly knows the seat's getting hot. He's going, by the way, to the Big Ten. Not with a hand tied behind his back, with a hand ripped off his body.
Right.
UCLA, I was reading this today, because Mick Cronin, the head basketball coach at UCLA, is annoyed with the NIL situation at Westwood. Mm-hmm. And UCLA, okay, first of all, in the Big Ten, there are NIL bank accounts that are 8 figures.
Oh, yeah.
UCLA, according to what I read today, their NIL, 6 figures. Now, is eight larger than 6?
Last time I checked.
So basically, you're looking at, let's say, $10 million in a Big Ten coffer for NIL, and then Chip Kelly goes, well, I only got $822,000 here at UCLA, or whatever it is. So basically, if you're Chip Kelly, you're like, look, my butt's kind of warm on this seat, and I don't have the NIL money, period. Forget competing in the Pac-2 or the Pac-12 or the 2-Pac or wherever you want to call that thing. We're going to the Big Ten, where they've been getting Big Ten money for a while.
Right.
And I got to go here. I'm expected to win 9 or 10 games. I got no help from the NIL, and I'm going up against people who have a ton of money in so many ways.
Well,
You know what? I think I want to be an offensive coordinator for one of those teams.
and for what it's worth, UCLA is a very high academic institution that has a tougher barrier of entry where maybe some athletes aren't able to be recruited there because they're not going to meet the academic standards, to where if you go to Ohio State, again, still a good academic institution, those standards a little bit lower where maybe you can get some of those guys.
Because, Ohio State's, they have academic standards. You know what else they have? Winning standards.
That's right.
So you're going to get some people into Ohio State that you couldn't get into possibly at UCLA. And it just feels like UCLA is they have a very like, oh, wow, whatever about sports,
Right.
especially football. They're like, oh, wow, man, like, whatever. It's cool. We'll just kind of go skateboarding. Well, all right. I mean, the attendance. Remember the pictures last year of the Rose Bowl during a UCLA game on the internet,
Right.
on social media?
Right.
It was pretty embarrassing.
It was.
It was like, hey, I need a good, quiet place to study. Let's go to a UCLA football game. And so UCLA in itself, I think, is an underachieving program in football. Obviously, they're not what they were in basketball. No one will be that. But if you're Chip Kelly, and really we've said this about Chip Kelly, the dude isn't the Oregon guy anymore.
Well,
He's just not.
The game has caught up to what he does. He was very much an innovative mind that took the opportunity of playing that fast tempo offense where you couldn't substitute and all that kind of stuff, where you're catching the defense gassed or sleeping or whatever you want to phrase it, to where now you have rules that, kind of limit that a little bit to where his offense isn't as innovative as it once was.
Right, because remember, his thing was we're going to get mismatches because we're playing so fast.
Yeah, we're gonna run 12 plays in over the course of about 2 real-time minutes.
So it was like every 3 seconds to run another play. So Chip used that as a strategic advantage that's now been taken away.
Right.
And now we see he's not as guru-y as he used to be.
Right.
But anyway, going back to the point of Sean Elliott, this is kind of at Georgia State. NIL's a thing. You're getting poached by higher level schools. You can't really poach to maybe fortify. So you're sitting around saying, my job is here to win and keep going to bowl games. I'm having a tough time bringing in talent and trying to stop myself from losing talent. Maybe it's time to go. Maybe it's time for me to go and maybe be something else for a while.
And again, it hasn't always been coaches by name coming forward and saying this, but you read in a lot of different places. There's a lot of coaches that are saying, hey, I may just walk away from this thing in a couple of years. They're making money hand over fist in most places anyway, to, where, hey, if I decided to retire at 45 and I've been coaching at the D1 level for 10 years, I'm probably pretty set for life. And you know what? If things change and I like the structure of college football 4 years from now, I can come back because I'm still going to have this rapport and resume that's going to be worthy of getting another job. So, again, I think we're just kind of scratching the surface of what this could be over the next couple of years.
And, a guy like, Sean Elliott, like we said, your job is to win. And if you pull some 4 and 5 win seasons, guess what you're going to be? The ex-coach of Georgia State.
That's right.
So you're asked to win, and, it's like, what's the old saying? It's like trying to win the Daytona 500 on a Segway.
Yeah, probably not going to happen.
No, you're just, you don't have the resources to keep your players. Your players are going to leave for greener pastures, and you're going, I'm going to get ahead of the game here and move on.
Right.
So, but it's good for South Carolina, and we'll get into that. Sean Elliott, obviously a really nice get for Shane Beamer. Bring Elliott back, intense guy. Did really good work
to say the least.
I'm trying to be nice. And again, I like Joe D and Sean Elliott are bringing an intensity and an edge to the coaching staff. You still have a lot of guys who are about joy and love and happiness, don't get me wrong, but you bring a couple of guys with a little bit of, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. All right, we'll go to your Firehouse sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. If you're on hold, we'll get to you as well. Don't go anywhere. It is the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We're rolling this sucker up until 3 on the game. Oh, time for the Firehouse sub text of the hour on the halftime show. 803-404-6100. Go for it.
Yeah, nameless texter weighs in. They actually sent me the full list of the acceptance rates. They said, had no clue UCLA has an acceptance rate of 9%, which is among the highest in all of Division I football. It's pretty crazy.
Think about that for a minute. 9%.
Do you know who the highest is?
Who?
Or it's the lowest technical acceptance rate is?
Who?
Stanford.
Really?
So the top schools go Stanford, Duke, Northwestern, Vandy, Rice, UCLA. Those are all schools less than 10% acceptance rate.
Wow. And what's UCLA?
9%.
So, well, where's Ohio State in there?
Oh, Ohio State's at 53%. There's one school that has 100%. Do you know who it is? Take a guess.
Give me a second.
FBS football.
Oh, really? Who?
Yep. UTEP.
Really?
UTEP.
Interesting.
Yep.
So basically, they just take you.
I guess so.
You're in.
Can be a minor.
Should have went to UTEP. Well, maybe not. I had a buddy of mine play baseball at UTEP. He's got some stories. You're not far from the border.
Yeah, hot out there.
Yeah, it's hot, and they got some good stories when they went on the south side of the border that we can't really tell here. Won't go well.
Statute of limitations haven't passed.
Yes. What's Michigan's acceptance rate?
Oh, that's a good question. This is color coded. Let me find it. They're at 18, so pretty high.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because, like, a lot of folks, I have friends that are Michigan fans, and when Ohio State was whooping them like a drum every year, what you would always hear is this, yeah, but they'll take anybody to win.
Right.
We don't just take anybody. We actually try to care about academics. When Ohio State, they'll take anybody.
Yeah, that argument doesn't quite hold up.
They're not really talking about it right now, are they?
They're not. Alabama is at 80%.
Really? Are you surprised by that?
No.
Me either.
Trying to see what other
Where's South Carolina?
South Carolina is 64%.
There you go.
So kind of in the middle.
I wonder what the SEC acceptance rates are compared to, because, it just means more here.
Yes, if I had a little bit of time to crunch some numbers, I could
maybe we'll do
get you that answer.
Maybe we'll circle back to this tomorrow.
Yes.
And you can crunch some numbers, some SEC
I can do that.
acceptance rates.
I can do that.
UCLA at 9. Just tells you.
Again, you have plenty of athletes that are high on academics, and you have others that if you've been around college athletes, you know that some of them are not the brightest bulbs.
That's okay.
So sometimes you have to turn them away because they're not going to fit your academic standards, and that could be a 5-star cornerback that's going to the NFL that, hey, sorry, you can't play at UCLA.
And some schools will have exceptions
That's right.
to get said players in. Some don't. It's just the way it goes, man.
When I was in college, and I will leave this guy's name out, he played at Georgia, ended up transferring somewhere else, but I had a class with a very prominent student athlete, football player at the time, that I came away from that class like, this guy's as dumb as a bag of rocks. And that was a difficult class, right? And I remember we were taking like the final at the end of the class, and like I passed it, but it was a struggle. And he sat behind me, and I remember like, there's no way this guy passed. But guess what? When the season rolled around, guess who's on the football field? Him. I was like,
Weird how that happened.
I don't know who was doing his work for him, but somebody definitely was.
Well, here's the thing, too. Lou Holtz, I was told stories about, there's a couple people who worked at Notre Dame with Lou. He was very frustrated because Notre Dame doesn't play around.
Oh, no, they are actually.
Where are they at on the list?
Let me pull that back up because they're going to be pretty high on the
Notre
list.
Dame.
They're at 13. They're high.
Notre Dame does not screw around with, they don't have a lot of exceptions.
Right.
And Lou wanted more exceptions. And, Lou would go to admissions and they would go, sorry, Lou. And look, I get it.
Sure.
From a football coaching standpoint, you go, look, I get how we have high academic standards, but I need some exceptions here. Come on, guys, help a brother out. He had a few, but guess what? Not as many as other schools who competed at a high level.
Right.
So,
Kentucky's at 95. Believe it or not.
You know what? I'm not really surprised. Are you?
No. I got one better. Ole Miss is at 97.
There you go.
What's your major? Partying.
That's right. What do you major in? The Grove. I major in the Grove. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, man, that's good. Thank you for the text, by the way. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Nameless Texter. This is, we can do it. We can have a lot of fun with this list.
Yes, we can. Thank you. And we'll do one again, 803-446-100 next hour. If you're on the phone, we're going to get to you, I promise. So just this is a very short segment. Don't want to shortchange you, get you on, let you get your thoughts. We'll get you in the next segment because football in the 1 o'clock hour. And we got some calls about football we will get to. So just hang in there for a few more minutes with us and we'll get you in. As we, that's sponsored by our buddies at Atlantic Windows and Doors, by the way, football here on the game. And we will get back to the conversation of what happened last night. It's easy. It was Auburn's night. They couldn't miss. They could shoot opposite-handed, blindfolded, flip it behind your back, be like the Harlem Globetrotters. Didn't matter. Did not matter. I mean, just buckets and buckets and buckets by the Auburn Tigers last night. It's one of those nights. You just, again, you wash it, dirt on your shoulder, and you move forward and get ready for LSU at home this weekend. And LSU scuffling in a lot of ways this season, so this is a get-right game for you. Go back, be you, play like you, and get yourself back in the win column. All right. Football, lots of football in the 1 o'clock hour here on the game. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, halftime show. We'll get to your calls on the Love Chevy phone line, Firehouse sub text line. And we'll talk more about Sean Elliott coming back as a tight ends coach and running game coordinator for the Gamecocks. That's coming up here on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We are cooking this baby till 3. It's time for the 1 o'clock hour, which is football.
Real quick, continuing on, we were talking about acceptance rates. How many of those schools do you think we get accepted into?
Anybody who had 100%?
UTEP.
I go to UTEP.
Go to UTEP.
I get to UTEP.
Maybe we go to Ole Miss.
I don't know. That's only 97%. I'm kind of on the fence there. I don't know. I might not make it to Ole Miss, but I'm definitely in on UTEP.
Go become minors.
Minors, baby. So who accepted you? Well, I got offers from who? UTEP.
I never have to buy a jacket.
I know.
It's nice out there.
It's beautiful. Little
Sun
cactus thing.
Sun Bowl, great place.
I know. UTEP. He played 2 years of baseball, buddy of mine at UTEP.
Yeah.
It wasn't cold. Don't have to worry about that too much. Yeah, he had fun.
Do you still talk to that guy?
Oh yeah.
Bring that up next time. Be
Yeah,
like,
I will.
100% acceptance rate,
knowing him, this doesn't surprise me at all. Put it this way. He's my buddy. I love him to death. Not running too many Mensa meetings.
Didn't have a lot of options, did you, man?
Not at all. Not at all.
Either that or University of Phoenix.
Hey, play some ball there. They have a 100% acceptance rate, I would say.
They're probably close to it.
Yeah. All right. Football brought to you by Atlantic Windows and Doors. 40 years in the Midlands, Atlantic Windows and Doors, the best quality and the best selection for windows and doors for your home. AWDSC.com. We've talked a lot about Sean Elliott. If you haven't heard, Sean Elliott leaving the Georgia State head coaching gig to come be the tight end / run game coordinator for Shane Beamer, filling that spot in the staff for Shane, where Justin Stepp taking off to go to Illinois. So Sean Elliott is back. All right, let's go to the Love Chevy phone line, 803-404-6100. Our buddy Ray has been waiting patiently. Appreciate your patience, my friend. You're on the game, Ray. What's up, man?
Tyler, Terry, hey, guys, I want to tell you, when I heard that this morning on the same radio station, I tell you, I got really excited because, man, this is definitely an upgrade here. I mean, of course, with our running game the last 3 years, I guess anything could be an upgrade, but this is a serious upgrade. Sean Elliott, I'm telling you, he brings that, you guys talked about earlier, he brings that toughness. I mean, this is going to be old school driving the sled, whooping your guy at the line of scrimmage. This is exactly what we need. I mean, in fact, the last time, Terry, we had an offensive line that saw the game away. Get the ball with, 5 minutes left, and you can just rely on your running game just to kill the clock and get out of there with a win. The last time we could do that was when Sean Elliott was on our staff. And, man, I am excited with Sean Elliott and Rocket Sanders. And, golly, think about last year, that game against Florida. If we had any kind of running game, we win that game.
Yes.
We literally had to throw the ball at midfield in the fourth quarter with a lead with 3 minutes left in the game because we could not run the ball. And I will tell you that is changing. And I tell you guys, I'm very excited about Sean Elliott. And being Sean Elliott's from Camden, and he played his ball at App State, and those guys up there are tough. I tell you, they're tough. And he was an O-line coach at App State as well.
Yep.
He brings to this program exactly what we need. And I give kudos to Coach for making that decision. And I tell you, Beamer, he's working his butt off. But this is a good move, guys.
All right. Well, we appreciate it like always, Ray. Thank you, pal. Yeah, I mean, look, Sean Elliott was the offensive line coach here previously under Spurrier.
Even the interim after he left for
head coach.
Half of that season.
Right. And, Sean Elliott. So coming back as the run game coordinator, part of coordinating a run game is under the umbrella of dealing with the offensive line in the back. So you're going to deal with, 2 other rooms, putting together your offensive game plan regarding running the ball. So Sean Elliott's still going to kind of be involved with the offensive line, so to speak, even though he's not the offensive line coach because he's coordinating the run game.
And I think it's interesting because, like you said, he's going to have kind of a hand in a lot of different aspects of this offense. When Pete Limbo left to go become the coach at Buffalo, he was the only head coach underneath Shane Beamer that was on the staff. And yes, James Coley has filled that role as Joe DeCamillis has filled that role as the assistant head coach that Pete Limbo is leaving behind. But he himself, outside of the one game when he was in Denver, had never been a head coach. Now you have another guy on the staff that has been the head coach in college football at, a similar, not necessarily the same level of the SEC, but Power 5 for Division 1 football's Division 1 football. So he's experienced things, he understands things, and can help, give a different perspective that maybe guys that have only been coordinators like Coley and so on and so forth, can bring to the table. So it's just adding another smart mind to an already really good room. And I agree with Ray there. I think Shane Beamer, just in these couple of months alone, has done a really good job with the coaching hires that he's made and addressing the areas that needed help this past season.
Look, no offense to anyone who is here or was here or whatever the case. Coley is an upgrade.
Sure.
Coley's a high-level dude. I mean, a great recruiter. Has been an offensive coordinator, has coached receivers. Coley is an upgrade to your coaching staff. And now, because of the way things have gone, you bring in a Sean Elliott, and you hit it perfect. A guy, I mean, we're talking about, 7 years at Georgia State as the head coach? He brings a wealth of experience sitting in the head coach's office. Also, obviously, hasn't been an offensive line coach. He's done. I mean, this also upgrades your coaching staff in a lot of ways.
Sure.
So, there's some things happening with Limbo going, and with Justin Stepp taking off, and some other moving pieces here. I think Shane's done a nice job filling out a staff. Now you got a little versatility and a little, you still got your younger coaches, about Love and Joy and Huggin and everything else, and you got a couple old school guys like Joe D and Sean Elliott. I mean, a little intense.
Yeah.
Got a little something going on. Got a little growl.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well,
nice little mix.
And I think the testament to that, when you look at, and again, Beamer's only been a head coach for 3 years, so there's not a ton of examples to look at necessarily, but you look at hiring Dow Loggins as the offensive coordinator last year. Hey, that looked to be an upgrade from what you had with
Marcus Satterfield.
The previous 2 seasons before. You look at what you're doing here with, with Sean Elliott, and again, no disrespect to Jody Wright or, to Justin Stepp, but you see this as a guy that already has experience in this program as a step up, and including the fact that he's going to be involved in the run game as well. You talk about Coley, you talk about Blackwell. These moves that he's making are seen from the jump as, hey, this is a step in the right direction. This is a step farther forward than we were, and we hope it translates on the field.
And Blackwell's another guy.
That's right. Led very good rushing attacks in the SEC in years past.
And he's been an offensive coordinator. Whether that went well or not, he has experience in that job.
Right.
So you've brought in guys with more skins in the game, with experience, and with some other, it gives you versatility in a lot of ways when you're coaching staff. And like you said, Dow Loggins, I mean, dude coached in the NFL, really good quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator. He did it.
And you're probably splitting hairs when you say, is Joe DeCamillis a better special teams coach than Pete Limbo? Because Pete Limbo legitimately one of the best in the country. But if you're looking for somebody to replace him after he left, a guy with 30 years of experience in the NFL coaching special teams, that's a pretty good get.
Because remember this, Pete Limbo didn't get fired.
That's right.
He left to take a head coaching gig. So now you've got to fill the vacuum of Pete Limbo.
Right.
You just brought in a guy that coached 30 years of special teams in the NFL. Not bad. Not bad at all. Dow Loggins, coaching the NFL for a long time, did 2 years at Arkansas. Yeah, we can talk about the resume as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. He was running Adam Gase's offense.
Sure.
He wasn't running his own. But he's a guy with a ton of experience that he brought to the table here. Same thing with Elliott. A lot of experience you're bringing to the table. So I think that what you have now is a very well-rounded staff in a lot of different ways, whether from experience, different job titles they've had, different roles they've had as coaches, different kind of demeanors and personalities. So,
and you need a mix of that.
Yes.
You can't have everybody within the same mindset agreeing on all the same things. No. You need to have discord. You need to have guys that have seen and experienced different things at different levels and different positions across college football. That's how you get well-versed across the board.
And you got different guys, different ages.
Yeah.
So guys from like different eras of coaching on the staff now too. So I think it's very interesting. So Sean Elliott should be a wonderful addition to the South Carolina coaching staff. Absolutely. So that pretty much that takes care of the coaching staff. Done?
Here's the thing. Usually we don't have coaching moves happen in the month of February. We've had the Hafley thing that happened a couple weeks ago, Chip Kelly moving on, now Sean Elliott. I'm sure there's some other ones out there that I'm not even thinking of right now. Like, we're in this weird era of college football now where anything can happen at any time, and hopefully the staff stays in place the way it is. But let's say somebody else goes and takes a job somewhere else, and now you're suddenly having to fill another vacancy. It's not impossible.
So Deshaun Foster gets promoted at UCLA.
Right.
Played at UCLA, was a running back. Has done a nice job coaching the running backs at UCLA. Now he gets moved up to head coach.
which was very popular with the players.
The players wanted Deshaun Foster.
Sure.
And again, your thought process is, and you don't want to have this come into play, but unfortunately it does, because you want to hire the best head coach.
Right.
And the players typically aren't the ones to tell you who the best head coach is. I mean, is it nice to hear what they think? Sure, you put that in your decision making, but you can't say, well, the players want him. That's the guy we're keeping.
Right.
But in this era now, do you want to keep your team together? You've got to really think about hiring from within, at least temporarily, because you're kind of stuck right now. You don't have a job search. I mean, I know Deshaun Foster got a 5-year deal,
Yep.
but still, you're like Zach Arnett at Mississippi State. Oh my God, our head coach passed away. What are we going to do? All right, defensive coordinator, young, smart, a lot of people love him. Let him be the interim coach for the bowl game. Okay, that seemed okay.
Sure.
Let's give him the head coaching gig now. Let's see how it goes. Again, you were stuck in a weird time to find a coach. So let's just try this. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you know what we're going to do? We're going to move on.
And look, I feel for the Georgia State program. They were already in the middle of spring practice. Their spring game was coming up at the beginning of March. Like were already ingrained what they were doing for preparations for next season, and their apparently spring practice has been canceled until further notice. Which again, you don't have a head coach, so I completely get it. But and I don't know if Sean Elliott was giving them the speech about loyalty and stay committed to a program or anything
Family.
like that. But yesterday he was their coach, and now today they don't have one. So and again, they're on the lower end of FES football, so you don't really think about them that much. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how they deal with the fallout of this and how it affects them too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little weird they just shut down spring practice. Don't you have any assistants that can step up and run spring practice?
Again, it's one of those things like, I mean, the Michigan football program ran without Jim Harbaugh for half the season technically, so you would think you're just bumping up a coordinator saying, all right, you're the head coach now until we figure this out.
You have no one on this staff that can step up and even in the interim run the spring practice to get to the spring game.
You would think, but I don't know.
That's kind of weird, but anyway, that's their problem. It is kind of, again, like you said, a clunky time to be having this happen.
Because all the hot names, the coordinators that are stepping up, the former head coaches that are available, all those guys are off the board.
Sure they
so
are.
whoever you're hiring now, it's like, unless you are promoting from within, you're like, I guess you'll do. Sure, come on.
Well, that's almost like, I feel like at Georgia State, you just sit there, put names in a hat and go, all right, that guy.
Right.
Or you just find someone on the staff who you think could be the guy to just at least get you through the spring practice, right?
Sure.
But then you go back to the UCLA thing again. It's a weird time to look for a coach. You got a guy that the players really like. You want to try to keep as many guys together on a team that did have a winning record last year. You move Foster up. You give him a couple years. If he can do it, great. If he seems in over his head, then you're going to move on in a regular coaching search type of process.
Right.
I get it. Like, that's why I'm surprised with Georgia State shutting everything down. I figure they just look around the coaching staff and say, okay, who do you think could be a head coach, at least in the short term?
You're not implementing game plans here.
No.
You're running through drills and
Spring.
regular practice and stuff like that. And then you're scrimmaging yourself at, in March. Like it's not anything too elaborate, I would
Kind
think.
of strange. But anyway, again, that's their problem. So you get Sean Elliott in. It feels like that there's not a whole lot left going on in the country. And Shane's definitely done. His staff's finished.
Right.
All right. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head. It's football. We haven't really talked about the TV deal that much.
No, we haven't.
So let's get to the TV deal, ESPN, with the college football playoff folks. A large deal. Was it as large a deal as they thought they would get? Who else was in? Maybe nobody else was in on this thing either. Maybe ESPN overbid everyone. Why would they do that? Let's yip about that a little bit coming up on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, football, the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on The Game. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head as we roll football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored always by our buddies at Atlantic Windows and Doors. It's very interesting. This whole thing with the ESPN and the college football playoff. I mean, what's it? $7.8 billion over 6 years.
Yeah, roughly. I think it's 1.2 per year, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's a significant upgrade from what the previous contract was.
Yeah, $700 million raise from what the schools and the conferences are making now, according to Stuart Mandel.
Right.
From The Athletic. I mean, the thing about it to me was that ESPN, from what I'm reading, nobody was close. There wasn't like a bidding war here.
Right.
was
Oh,
almost
did you think anybody else was going to be able to pony up?
Well, you're thinking Rupert Murdoch has more money than most continents. So if Fox wanted to get in the game, because Fox has really thrown themselves into college football, obviously.
They have.
They got. I mean, they own the Big Ten network, really.
But think about the money they throw at the NFL.
And I think they'd rather have the NFL.
Yeah.
But if you want to get the top two,
That's
you got
true.
the top two.
Yeah.
But it seems like ESPN was just far and away with what they probably bid against themselves. And Stuart Mandel brings up something interesting. And I don't know if I agree with all of this, but from his Athletic post, the TV sports market has softened due to various companies' financial constraints, as the Pac-12 learned the hard way. College football playoff is much more of a must-have. That's what I was going to say. So it's always going to garner suitors, but the college football playoff folks may have been surprised that the numbers being offered weren't higher.
Right.
I still think that's a pretty good number to get offered, but here's the thing. First of all, you can't compare the sports TV market to the Pac-12 cratering over TV.
No.
It's out. The money's out there for like the SEC, the Big Ten, things of that nature. It just feels like ESPN. And the thing about ESPN really quick, remember, they're having issues.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, God, they're cutting jobs every 3 months.
cord cutters everywhere, right?
Right.
I mean, they're trying to put their streaming service on. I mean, ESPN Plus is one level. They want to go bigger level on a streaming service, right?
Right.
And they've lost money with that Disney bundle, from what I'm reading. That Disney bundle has lost money, not made money.
Well, now they're talking about the bundle with Viacom and Discovery and all that kind of stuff. Where now you're trying to get all the sports networks
Fox
into
is
one
in that
thing.
too,
Fox
right?
in there
Yeah.
too. Which I mean, hey, I'd sign up for that. If that became available. But yeah, they've certainly been hurt by the changing landscape of the way that we watch television over the years, for sure.
Well, here's the other part of this. ESPN. So maybe this is where we go, ESPN will have the right to sublease games to other networks if they choose. So basically, they can make money on the down low by saying, hey,
Right.
Fox, want to run a quarterfinal game or two?
And
Pay us.
the interesting part about this, a while back while this was still in negotiations, I had read that the college football playoff was looking to try and get a Super Bowl type of deal between multiple networks. So it's like, okay, we're going to rotate between ESPN, Fox, NBC, and CBS, and each one of you get all the games, the quarterfinals, semis, and the national championship every 4 years, and that way you can get potentially a bigger sum from all four of those than just from one entity. So that door has closed technically, but again, that does open up the possibility that, and again, I'll be interested to see how they kind of schedule things as far as television goes, especially for the quarterfinal games where you have 4 games over the course of 2 days. Like, hey, maybe for this round or this first round or whatever it may be, maybe we give Fox a game, maybe we'll give CBS a game, but again, they're paying us. So it still benefits us and, kind of gets them involved as well, and maybe that's something that could expand as the years go by. That is an interesting caveat in this that I don't really know where it's going to go, but it will be used in some kind of way.
You're the middleman.
That's right.
And what do you always say about prices go high? Because you got to pay who? The middleman.
That's right.
So ESPN might make up for not make up all of it, but one of the ways they're going to make up for the gigantic cost is by being the middleman and maybe going, hey, Fox, hey, CBS, let's talk about you guys getting a piece of this. And Kevin Warren was the guy who was pushing hard for the Super Bowl model.
Sure.
Where's he at now?
He's in the NFL
Yeah.
with the Bears. That's going well.
Good year one, Kev. So this thing that's the thing that's interesting to me, is the way they can sublease the games if they choose to. Now, remember, Disney's trying to figure everything out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another aspect of this we just talked about. Are they going to get their streaming thing right, either for themselves or this lump of entities that are getting together? What about ESPN Plus? What are they going to do? Because the cord cutting is real. I'll say this, man. There's still millions of people who have cable.
Yeah, of course.
And honest to God, I know this isn't the ultimate because ESPN, one of the things that's made ESPN such a behemoth is people that don't even know what ESPN is are paying money for ESPN every month.
Sure, it's like a $2 charge whether you watch it or not.
What I might do if I'm ESPN, and they won't, is I get your streaming, but maybe you go to the cable companies, and maybe all these sports networks who are on cable systems go to these cable companies and say, hey, how about we put together an a la carte sports package? Again, that's not ideal, but here's what it is. People that are cutting might cut the big cable package, but still take the a la carte sports package.
Right.
So you're still going to get, and you set up a deal where you're getting something.
Sure.
Even though it might not be what you're getting with 7 billion people, it's better than nothing, right?
And let's be honest, sports are what's keeping live television afloat.
Oh God, yeah. Look at all the ratings for all Nielsen numbers on TV.
Well, and it gets to the point now where your weekly episodic television shows, they tell you in the commercial to set your DVR. They know you're not going to watch it at 7 o'clock on a Monday night because you're busy doing something else. You're going to catch it,
it's an on-demand
on
world,
Tuesday afternoon while you're eating dinner or something like that. So live sports is the only thing that can actively draw people's eyeballs to your TV at a set time and place because, and look, I DVR things when I need to. There's something different about watching a game on DVR when it's actually already happened as opposed to watching it live when you can react to it and interact with people, in real time. So that's always going to have a precedence for cable for sticking around because, again, without that, what do they really have?
I mean, like you said, it's an on-demand world. And I set my DVR, whatever, or people have just, again, cut the cord and they go on their streaming service and watch the show at some point.
You have a family member or a neighbor that is very generous with their login where, hey, I don't have cable anymore. Can I get your ESPN password so I can watch some games?
Sure, man. Here you go.
Yeah, man, why not?
No big deal.
So if you have that person in your life, thank them.
Yeah, exactly. So this is interesting that, ESPN really, it felt like they were bidding against themselves. They put out a bid that nobody was going to come close to.
Right.
But the key here could be the subleasing of these games. So we'll see where it goes. But again, this thing is going to evolve and change in a few years anyway to something else. Always does. All right, we'll get back in here. Football here in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll take a look at anything we've missed because there's a lot of things going on in the world of sports.
If we want to keep this conversation going, we have a TV contract for the new college football playoff. We still don't have a structure yet.
Now, we can get to that as well. And obviously, this is football related, but it's not a bad day. A good day in Kansas City turned bad.
Yes.
So we've got that coming up in our 1 o'clock hour, brought to you by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We are cooking here till 3 on the game.
great. Practice today looked good. Great to have her back. I don't think so. She might be on a little restriction, just depending on how she plays and how she feels. Sure. But she wanted to get out here and just kind of get going a little bit. And she did well.
All right. No, Dawn Staley's not playing football because we're doing football in the 1 o'clock hour. But Dawn Staley and her women will be on tonight here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia. 7 o'clock, right after Carolina calls with Coach Paris. 6:30 we start the women's pregame on our sister station, ESPN 1320 WISW. Then 7 o'clock full game right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia right after Carolina calls with Lamont Paris. Also will be heard on 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. Also real quick, and we'll get to this more in the 2 o'clock hour, Mark Kingston is named the starting rotation for this weekend. Eli Jones goes Friday, Dylan Eskew Saturday, Roman Kimball on Sunday. We'll talk more about that next hour, but Mark Kingston has announced his weekend rotation for the opening weekend. And obviously, we're at Village Idiot on Friday. We'll be there for our halftime show / Carolina Baseball opening day spectacular, so to speak. So we will be there. Tyler and I will be hanging around there. Also, Jay will be with us for a while. We'll hear from Ray Tanner, obviously the AD, but former baseball coach at South Carolina. We'll talk some baseball with Coach Tanner. David Cloninger from the Post and Courier is going to come on over and hang with us.
We're going to have pizza, right?
It's Village Idiot, of course.
I'm just making sure.
Of course.
Just making sure.
Of course.
That's my appearance fee. Is the food.
mean, why? It might be all of our appearance fee. I mean, why would we not want to go to the Village Idiot to eat pizza?
I'm just making sure.
If Brian Glenn said, hey, we're out of pizza. Well, we got some technical difficulties. Brian, don't know if we can be there.
All right. Weird. We can't make it.
It's bizarre how this happened. So that is on Friday. All right, and we'll talk more about, obviously, the women tonight, Lamont Paris, what happened last night on the Plains, and also the rotation for Carolina baseball and what's trending at 2, brought to you by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. That's 2 o'clock. All right, back to football. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, there's a great little video on social media of Sean Elliott getting his Georgia State dudes pumped up before the game, where he's almost wrestling with all of them and smacking them in the head, and he's a little intense.
You remember Eric Russell, right?
Oh, yeah, Georgia.
Vince
And
coordinator,
Southern.
Georgia Southern, who is notoriously known for headbutting players without a helmet on.
I know.
Before,
he had no hair.
I mean, he had blood streaming down his forehead. He was an intense dude. Like, Sean Elliott reminds me a lot of the things that I've seen from him back in the day.
Oh, man, it is.
You think he bites kneecaps? Think Sean Elliott's a kneecap biter?
Oh, he'd be a kneecap biter. He'd push Dan Campbell out of the way to bite kneecaps.
I'd like to watch those two guys like scrap with each other. I think that'd be very entertaining.
That'd be fun. I mean, Campbell's a bit, but Elliott's intense.
Elliott's got that low center of gravity.
Yeah.
Though. Like that's good for fighting.
Yeah, I could. That'd be a fun one. That'd be a fun little watch in the octagon, or just make it a no holds barred match.
Oh yeah, let
that'd
him
be fun.
Claw eyes and bite kneecaps, the whole 9 yards.
It would be just like Mankind and The Rock. It's my favorite ever.
30 chair shots.
That match lasted 3 hours. It was beautiful.
Good thing Mick Foley doesn't remember any of it.
No, he shouldn't. There was pieces of Mick Foley's brain flying through the crowd. Anyway, all right, so Sean Elliott is back to be tight ends coach / run game coordinator at South Carolina. And we talked about it in and out of the show. The run game's got to just get better. And I think to Shane's credit, filled the running back room, upgraded the running back room. You've got about 500 offensive linemen, either coming in as freshmen, holdovers from last year, transfer portal, coming back from injury. You've got to be able to put together a solid 5-man crew out of that, I would think.
I think it's very interesting talking about the running back situation to when Elliott was here previously as a run game coordinator under Steve Spurrier. You had Marcus Lattimore, who, when healthy, was legitimately one of the best running backs in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Same situation with Rocket Sanders. As long as he can stay healthy, there may not be a better running back in the SEC this upcoming season.
And this team is going to change. I mean, last year, obviously, it was Spencer Rattler's show. The combination of offensive line problems, running game problems. The offense was built around Rattler to begin with, but it just became more Rattler with the way things played out last year. This coming up year, you got a first-year starter in Lenore Sellers. Sellers can tuck it and run with it. He's also got a gun for an arm, but I feel like you're going to see a lot more of a balanced offense with run-pass mix.
Right.
than you saw the last couple of years, especially last year. So a run game coordinator with all these offensive line possible combinations and the potential, and obviously it's got to upgrade, plus the running backs, which are a definite upgrade. It will be interesting to see how South Carolina runs the ball this year. But Shane said it the other day, last time he talked to the media, run game's got to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Flat out has to get better.
You don't survive in this league if you can't run the ball. And South Carolina's been 10th or like 11th or worse in all three of the seasons under Shane Beamer. You talk about overall rushing yards.
I mean, the line of scrimmage has been a thing on both sides of the ball. Those have to, as I say it all the time, if South Carolina wants to get where Shane Beamer and the fan base and everyone across the street wants it to get, got to get better at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. All right. Also, we were talking college football, ESPN's billions and billions dollar contract with the college football playoff, which was not as much as the college football playoff people thought they were going to get. We've talked about that. Also, the college football playoff format, which still isn't nailed down yet.
So they are set to vote on it officially. So the 10 conference commissioners of the respective conferences, as well as Jack Swarbrick, who's the athletic director at Notre Dame, coming up on Tuesday, February the 20th. They're expected to adapt the 5-7 model. Now, that is only for the next 2 years. So the original contract of the college football playoff that ends after 2025. 26 and beyond is wide open. And when we talk about this deal between the SEC and the Big Ten collaborating, we talked about this the other day, they're not going to sign off on an AQ deal. Very likely not going to, because it benefits the SEC and the Big Ten for it to be legitimately teams 1 through 12 in the final college football playoff rankings, because guess what? Probably about 10 of those teams are going to come from those two conferences, if we're being honest.
I mean, the way I see this probably going is the SEC and the Big Ten are going to walk in the room together, maybe holding hands, and go, here's what we want to do.
Right.
And by the way, we got the juice.
Because everybody has to agree on this.
Yes. So what I think the caveat probably will be, because again, all the Power Four will have teams in the top 12.
Sure.
Maybe one, but you'll get a team in the top 12. My guess is you'll go top 11 and one group of 5, and the highest rated group of 5.
Which, here's the thing, the best group of 5 teams usually find their way in or around the top 12 anyway.
So it's not going to be like we're grabbing the 30th best team in America.
Sure.
But I feel like that's what's going to happen. Top 11, throw the highest rated group of 5, have a 12-team playoff.
Right.
I think at some point, I would like to see it 16 in a level playing field.
I think we'll get there eventually.
I think we will too. Right now, 12 and 4 buys, and the top 4 rated schools get the buys. I think if you set it up correctly, everyone, even though the ACC and the Big 12, they know what's up.
Sure.
But really, what are they going to do?
What can they do?
Exactly. I mean, honestly, and they're not going to say this out loud. They'll say it like when they're together, holding hands. They're going to go, we're lucky we're in this thing.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, it's the power too.
It is.
And that's where it's at.
And if we ever get to the point of, hey, we can have a breakaway from the NCAA and form this own minor league to please Jay for the NFL, it's more likely to be just the SEC and the Big Ten than it is to be all 4 of them.
But you know what? I don't want an SEC Big Ten Super League.
Oh, I don't either. I'm just saying if it were to happen, it could happen.
I could feel, that's the only thing that, well, this stuff doesn't concern me. I sleep fine.
Sure.
But the one thing as a fan of college football, I like everybody involved.
I do too.
I get it that the Big Ten and SEC, especially the SEC, is always going to have more dogs in the fight.
Sure.
I understand that. But I want everybody to be able to have their chance to swing their knuckles.
All right.
So I don't want to see this. I hear, and I'm not saying you're promoting it. We're hearing it everywhere.
Yeah.
SEC Big Ten could break off and do this and do that. I don't want that. I don't want the SEC Big Ten champion. I still like a national champion.
Right.
I still like, everybody getting, I know it's not fair. I get it's never going to be fair. But as much fair as it can be, having everybody involved.
It's never been fair,
never
for being
has
honest.
Been. Never. There's never been a level playing ground in college athletics.
The fact that we pretend that 133 teams are competing for the national championship every year is the fact that we think that 70 teams across all of Power 5 football is laughable.
Do you know how many really are contending for the national championship?
On a good year, maybe like 8 to 10 on a good year.
Usually 5.
Yeah.
But you're right, 8 to 10 on a good year.
Now, this does open it up where, hey, if you get hot at the right time, sure, you have your opportunity. But even then, I mean, we're talking about maybe 20-ish, 22, 23 teams in the mix.
I've been saving this because we haven't had a chance to talk about the expansion of the college basketball NCAA tournament. I actually went and did a little deeper dive in because all we hear about is 356 teams and 64 or 68 out of 356. That's a small percentage. That is, what's a nice way to put it? Fertilizer.
Exactly.
We'll give you the numbers on how much fertilizer it is in the 2 o'clock hour. Also, John Whittle's going to talk to us from Big Spur. We're going to yip some Carolina basketball and weave in some baseball with John as well. That's coming up at 2:15. We'll get back in here. Firehouse sub text the hour at 803-404-6100 on the game. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, till 3. Time to check the old Firehouse sub. Text the hour at 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Should probably turn my microphone on first. That'll probably help.
It's overrated. That's overrated.
I go back to our conversation about basketball in the last hour, and Michael weighs in and says, last night's game doesn't change anything for me. It was a tough game anyway, and Auburn just caught fire on top of that. Similar to when SC beats Kentucky. Kentucky is not as bad as SC made them look in that game. And going back to Lamont Paris's comments from last night, Auburn's not a 40-point better team than South Carolina. And if they rematched outside of the state of Alabama, then you feel like South Carolina's got a little bit better chance. Thankfully, again, you don't have to see them again in that state for the rest of the season.
I was talking to somebody about it last night after the game. I'm like, look, first of all, again, counts as one loss. That's it. 2, they are an unbelievable team at home.
Right.
They're not the same team away from their barn. They're just not. They're 3-4 on the road. And it's stunning when you look at their home road splits.
Sure.
So you take the combination of they're really good at home. 2, they're coming off a woodshed whooping by Florida and Gainesville, where they lost by double digits, by the way.
Yeah.
South Carolina's coming in first place. They're taking South Carolina seriously. They're geeked up to get that taste out of their mouth from the whooping they took from Florida. And then they just start making buckets. And then they make more buckets and more buckets and more buckets. Now, again, no one's saying that that's all it was. Just South Carolina, a little loose with the ball with 13 turnovers. Colin Murray-Boyles, for as good as he was last night, did have 4 turnovers.
Sure.
South Carolina, again, Auburn got them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. So is it a concern of, okay, you take us out of our comfort zone? Because we've seen it twice now.
Sure.
Alabama, Auburn, both games got out of control. So if you want to look for something to talk about, South Carolina, they've got to learn when they get out of their comfort zone to get themselves back in it so the game doesn't get out of hand.
Right.
But for the most part, that was just Auburn was unreal last night. And like Lamont said after the game, we just got to wash that thing and move on because it was just their night.
It's one of those things, if those two teams played 10 different times and you put them, let's say, 3 games in Auburn, 3 games here, and then 3 games, a neutral site and 1 game somewhere else or whatever it may be, then, you're probably looking somewhere in the area of maybe a 50-50 split. You certainly don't think that South Carolina loses every single one of those games by 40 points or something like that. So, yeah, you wash it away. You got to focus on LSU, who, again, not a great team, but if you're focused on what happened on Wednesday night, they can come in here and trip you up. So as long as you can put that behind you, move on to the next game. You still got all your goals in front of you. You're still in contention for the SEC. You can still have a good high seed in the NCAA tournament. All that's still out there. So this doesn't derail anything.
No. And we did a little 107.5 The Game Twitter X poll. How do you feel about the Gamecocks' loss to Auburn? A, Auburn was on fire. B, nobody wins in that arena. C, no change in my outlook. D, lost by 40. That's alarming. 45% Auburn was on fire. Yeah, absolutely. 25% no change in outlook. 20% lost by 40, alarming. 10% nobody wins in that arena. So, look, I would go with Auburn's on fire, but
Sure.
my outlook doesn't change. I'd probably go no change in my outlook.
Yeah.
Because, again, it was just a night last night where dudes were making buckets all over the court.
And I figured there were going to be some people that said, hey, Auburn won by 40 points. That's concerning because there's been a lot of people that are hesitant to embrace how good this team has been because they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, oh, been here before, waiting for the thing to go bad. And they point to that and say, well, there's the thing that went bad last night. And again, it's one game. Now, if they go out there and start losing 3-4 games in a row by 20 points, then okay, we've got a problem. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they should be fine, getting into this weekend and going through the next couple games. And look, they may lose another game before the season's over. They got another game against Tennessee, a Tennessee team that's going to be out for blood after what you did to them in their home court
They're gonna
a
come in
couple weeks
angry.
ago. Like, they're going to come in angry. And if you lose that game, it's still not the end of the world. You're still in a good position. You're still doing fine. So,
And you still got some tough roadies coming up, too.
exactly. And we knew that 7-game win streak had to end at some point. That's just the nature of basketball.
Yeah.
You didn't want it to end with a 40-point loss, but it did. Put it behind you and move on.
And LSU coming in, LSU has had a rough year. So LSU coming into your arena, hopefully that's your get right. You get right back on it. You beat LSU. I don't care if you beat them by 1. You just get a W.
I was listening to Bill and Preston driving in this morning, and this past Sunday, the women took on UConn, beat them pretty handily. UConn played last night, the same time South Carolina did, and whoever they beat
Xavier by 100
yeah,
or
beat
whatever.
Xavier by like 45 points. It's like that's how you respond.
Right.
You don't let that huge loss from the weekend carry over to your next game. You go out there, you handle your business, reestablish, hey, this is what we are, and we handle the teams that we should handle.
We just had the team we played out of their mind, and we had a bad night. One post off of our Twitter poll replying to us here at 107.5 The Game, 60% from the floor and 3, along with basically 90% from the line. 95% of the NBA would have lost that game. I'm more concerned with about keeping Ohio State away from Coach Paris. LSU on Saturday need a big crowd to continue our support of the fellows and coaches. I feel like LSU it's a nice potential for a get-back game, and we'll talk about Ohio State and Coach Paris in the next hour, as well as we do what's trending at 2. All that is coming up here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, John Whittle from the Big Spur at 2:15 as well, coming up here on the game. Don't forget tonight, Lamont Paris, Carolina calls at 6, 7 o'clock then women's basketball. The women taking on Tennessee in Knoxville. Again, you can hear it all right here on the game in Columbia at 107.5. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head here, rolling till 3. What's trending at 2? Always sponsored by our friends at Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. 2 locations, Sand Hills and Lexington. If you're looking for fine jewelry or you're looking for any kind of Gamecock gear, sometimes that fine jewelry might have Gamecocks on it. You go to Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry.
That's where I got my wife's Valentine's gift from.
Oh, how'd that go last night, by the way?
Went fantastic. She loved it.
Did she?
Where'd
you get her?
I got her a ruby ring. It's her birthstone. So born in July. So, yeah, also they play 107.5 The Game in Traditions.
Stunning.
Yeah. So you can go in there and listen to
Did you go
us.
in there and say, do you know who I am?
So I didn't realize I was actually wearing my station hat that day, and I saw the Tradition store with all the gear and stuff, and I actually went in there first, and it was during the post game show and Jay and Elijah on. And I was like, huh, I guess people can hear us in here.
Yeah.
And then I talked to the nice people that work on the jewelry side of things. Our guy Jeff, one of his sons, had worked there previously, so they knew him, recognized my hat and everything like that. So good experience, good folks over there.
Yeah, Scott, they're good people. So again, Traditions Fine Jewelry, Gamecock Traditions sponsoring What's Trending at 2. What's Trending at 2 is the rotation has been set for the Gamecocks for their opening weekend against Miami of Ohio. Now, David Cloninger from the Post and Courier just tweeted out here a little while ago a couple of minor injury issues. Matthew Becker, Roman Kimball, both dealing with minor injury stuff. Kimball will be one of the weekend starters, though, but according to David, it looks like Becker, there's a good chance he will not pitch this weekend. Eli Jones, the junior, will take the ball on Friday to start the season. Then redshirt junior Dylan Eskew will start, and then Sunday, it's Roman Kimball's turn.
Yeah, there was anticipation, just kind of reading through scrimmages and stuff like that the hope was that Becker was going to be your Sunday starter, which he may very well be once he, gets past whatever this injury is. So, yeah, Roman Kimball's somebody that people have been waiting to see for a while, so interested to see what he does on Sunday.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about Roman Kimball when he was rehabbing from Tommy John. It's like, man, this guy's got stuff. So good to see the first appearance of Roman Kimball as a starter on Sunday. Again, Miami of Ohio, South Carolina. Friday, we'll be at Village Idiot on Whaley, kind of doing our little opening day extravaganza, getting you ramped up to the 3:45 pregame and 4 o'clock first pitch here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia, 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. Tonight, the women will go at it, 6:30 the pregame on our sister station, ESPN 1320. Then the full game broadcast will be here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia at 7, right after Carolina calls with Lamont Paris. That is from 6 to 7. I'm sure Lamont will have some interesting things to say about what happened last night.
For sure.
Of course, it was a 40-point loss. Again, one loss is all it is. And Lamont, after the game, and you and I talked about it earlier many times, Lamont was different. After the Georgia loss, after the Alabama loss, Lamont was not happy with his crew. Last night, it was more of, dude, Auburn didn't miss a shot. What do you want to do? Here's Lamont post-game. Let's take cut 8. Hard day to try and get a W.
It was honestly, it was one of those days that was going to potentially be really hard to win no matter what you did, just with how they shot the ball, honestly. But certainly there was some responsibility on our end that contributed to some of those things. But then there was also a lot of wacky plays. As a loose ball, we dive on it in front of our bench. We don't come up with it. It scores into their hand, and they splash 3.
Yeah, they had a few of those.
I mean, it was multiple times like that. So, honestly, it's probably better that, I don't think we have the type of team that will have a hard time picking up the pieces. I don't think we're built that way. But it is easier to turn the page, I think, when you have this kind of performance, right? They're not a 40-point better than us team. No one has been that, right? But so I think they'll be able to move forward and say, hey, it's one of them days. I mean, you got a guy that goes 1 for 3 from the free throw line with one air ball and another one that barely hits the rim, but he goes 4 for 5 from the 3-point line, right? There was a lot going on.
That was Jahani Broom, who went 4 or 5 from 3 and 1 or 3 from the line and airballed one of the free throws. And it was one of those nights.
Yep.
And look, not to say, we talked about it earlier, South Carolina, yeah, there's things you clean up on both ends of the court from last night. But at the end of the day, they were just on fire. Are they 40 points better? No. You've been really good all year. You got a bunch of veteran dudes with maturity and experience. Again, that one's over. You move forward and you get ready for LSU at home. And I'll say it for the 50 millionth time, it just counts as one.
That's right.
And you just can't. And even Lamont brought it up, Coach Paris. Sometimes it's easier to get over a game like this where you go, well, it was just their night.
Yeah.
So
you beat on a buzzer beater, that may linger with you for a few days.
Or like Lamont said, let's say you don't box out and they get an offensive rebound on you. Or there's something you do with a breakdown that enables them to score, or there's you on the other end where you have a really good opportunity to win a game and you miss the shot, or whatever the case.
Right.
Dumb foul. No, this was just a night where, wow, these cats can't miss. Woo! All right, let's go get something to eat. That's really all you can do. All right, here's Lamont also talking about, the South Carolina bench has had some good nights. Last night was not one of them. 1 point out of the bench. Here's Lamont, cut 10, talking about the bench scoring.
Yeah, but they got guys coming into the game late in the game and, going full speed in one direction, crossover, pop-up, dribble from 18 feet. And it's nothing but bottoms. Like, hey, it's a good day. It's a good day for them. I mean, it's a good day for them. And they're good. So I don't want to say that in a way that it seems like I'm taking something away from them. But I'm telling you, they're going to look back and be like, no, that's a day. We had a really, really good day shooting the ball.
Yes. Auburn had a day. And I'll agree with the one to a point post from our Twitter X poll. There might have been a couple NBA teams that walk in there and get beat last night the way Auburn shot the rock. It was a crazy night. A crazy night. One last one here from Lamont. And we'll go with cut 11. Michi, for the most part, Michi's night was thumbs up in a lot of ways. Here's Lamont talking about Michi.
I think that's a fair assessment. We had to do more off the dribble, and we couldn't get stops. So, when a team plays like this, you got to get some of the stuff has to happen in transition, where the defense isn't back and set, and you're not in the teeth of the defense. I think you have to have some advantages. Well, when you're not getting stops, you're taking the ball out of the net, and you got to work to get the ball inbounds. Yeah. And then obviously that buys them time to get all set up. But I thought Michi was good, was aggressive. Did some good things, so hopefully that'll help us going forward. But it just also goes to show you, right? You can have your leading scorer kind of get back and score 22 and lose by 40 people. Right. Or he can have another game where he has 8 assists and you win against a really good team. So I just would be easy on that aspect of it and just, what's the total body of work and what kind of stuff are we generating? We were actually at one point, a large part throughout the game, we were at 1 point per possession, which is kind of our standard. If we get to that, we normally have a pretty decent chance to make something happen in terms of winning and losing, and today was just not that day. They had to be at 1.5 points per possession. I'm just telling you, we'll do the math when we get back there. Right. But they had to be at 1.5 points per possession, 1.4 probably for sure.
Weren't they at 1.5? 1.5, 1.6? Auburn points per possession?
I think so. Let me double check on that.
I think I saw that, but yeah, Auburn was, but they were out of their mind last night offensively. And, we haven't talked a ton about it. Michi, 8 of 17 from the floor, 2 of 6 from 3, hit all 4 of his free throws, had 7 boards. Michi, offensively, 17 shots to score 22 points. You'd like to be a little bit more efficient, but, all in all, a good offensive night for Michi. Talon Cooper really struggled last night. 1 for 6 from the floor, had a real lazy non-Talon Cooper kind of pass that ended up being a turnover and a dunk on the other end in transition. Cooper could have had maybe another turnover as well. They didn't give it to him. 0 assists for Talon Cooper. Matter of fact, South Carolina as a team had 5 assists on 18 made buckets. Just not typically what South Carolina has done when they've been efficient on the offensive end of the court. Right. Colin Murray-Boyles, 6 of 10 from the floor, 7 of 8 from the line, chipped in 7 boards, did have 4 turnovers, 19 overall. A good night mostly for the freshman. And B.J. Mack got to the line a ton, 7 of 8 from the line for 14 points. Again, Mack hit one of his two threes. He hit a 3 early and then seemed like he just couldn't get another one available. He had one other one in the second half that he front rimmed, but It's a tough night all the way around. You had a few good moments on offense from the guys we just talked about, but I mean, getting to the line, you got to the line 28 times.
He did.
That's a good thing.
And I think, for Colin Murray Boyles, when you look at, the size and physicality that Auburn played with, which, by the way, Dylan Caldwell, he's the kind of guy that the more you play against him, the more you're going to hate him because great player, but, his antics after blocks and stuff like that can really get under your skin. So which, by the way, that's great for the sport of college basketball. I love the fact that you have a character like that you can actively root against when your team is playing them. But that dude was all over the place making his blocks. As he's one of the best blockers in the SEC.
Yeah.
We kind of knew that. And, I think that's one of those games that hopefully Colin Murray Boyles can learn a lot from because those guys were all over him when he was near the basket as opposed to the past couple games where he's had a little bit more of a dominant presence more often than not. He was kind of brought back down to earth a little bit. Those still was able to grab those 7 rebounds, which is good, but hopefully that game's a good learning experience for him.
Auburn's a high-level defensive team on the perimeter and in the paint. And Colin Murray Boyles got to go through an education last night. Now, he got Johanny Broome a couple times.
He did. He got a little bit of his own.
He gave him a little something. He got some back, but he gave a little something. But you talk about Cardwell real quick. He had 4 blocks, and after every block, you thought they won the national title.
Yeah, pretty much.
He was ready to cut down the nets. He was so excited.
The guy that if he's on your team, you love him, and you put him up on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. If he's not on your team, you're playing against it. You hate his guts.
Here's the flip side of that. Cardwell also led Auburn with 5 assists and had no turnovers. Played 16 minutes, 8 points, 5 assists, 4 blocks.
Yeah.
I mean, he was even on the bench celebrating like he was in the game.
Oh, he was 4th in the league in blocks going into that game.
They're so deep. They're 9-10 guys deep. They really are. If they could bottle how they play at home and take it in the postseason, they'd be dangerous.
And that's what makes last night's game even more tougher going into it because that physical, grinded out type of defense that South Carolina plays where they try and wear opponents down. When you have 12 guys in your bench that you can rotate in, it doesn't work as effectively on that kind of team.
Yeah, last night, 9 guys got double-digit minutes. I know it was a blowout.
Sure.
And really, Bruce Pearl could have gone to the bench even earlier.
Yeah. They wanted to get 100.
Yeah, Bruce Pearl, they were rolling, and Bruce wanted to keep it rolling, so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah, he could have took the foot off the gas and put the towel waivers in a lot sooner.
Right.
Than he did. All right. Anyway, hey, you know what? Do what you do. That's okay. 101-61 was the final, and again Saturday. 3 o'clock pre, 3:30 tip, right?
I believe so.
3 o'clock pregame, 3:30 tip. LSU coming to CLA to take on South Carolina. Hopefully, a get-right game against a team that, don't get me wrong, they have some talent, but they've been struggling this year with the Tigers. All right, we'll come back in here, talk to our buddy John Whittle from the Big Spur. We'll talk men's hoops. We'll also talk baseball with John next. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game.
Cooper on the handle on the left wing. Gives to Murray Boyles in the high post. Spins his way to the basket, beats Broom, and off the glass, he kisses it in with the right hand.
That was a tough shot by the freshman.
Went right at Broom. Gamecocks, I think, might have some ideas about that isolation play, pulling Broom out to the high post.
Colin Murray Boyles, 19 last night. One of the few positives to take away from what happened on the Plains in the loss to Auburn. John Whittle was there from the Big Spur. Boy, that's a night to remember for you. Hey, John.
It was a very special performance by the Tigers. It was pretty impressive. Like you don't often see a team that much in the zone. But that's what they were. I mean, they hit a few uncontested shots. They hit some contested shots. They hit a couple of miracles out there. I mean, it was just impressive. And I thought they got South Carolina out of their game from an offensive standpoint pretty early. I mean, South Carolina couldn't get anything going on the offensive end. We've seen. I mean, Auburn kind of did to South Carolina what South Carolina's done to a lot of teams. I mean, they had. I think it was 22 assists on 36 made field goals, something like that for Auburn, and Carolina hardly had any assists on the night. And that's been a great staple of the Gamecocks offensively this year. They just couldn't ever seem to really get into the flow offensively. And when you throw what Auburn was doing on their end offensively into the mix, that's how a 40-point game happens.
John Whittle with us from the Big Spur, talking some Gamecocks here on the halftime show on the game. John, here's the sick part. Auburn shoots 60% from the floor, 60% from 2, 60% from 3, and they started 2 for 7. So when they caught fire, man, when they missed a shot, I was stunned. I mean, I think they were everybody was stunned. It was crazy how they got going. So how much do you, as you take a step back from it, not to say if you're Lamont Paris, there aren't some things you want to correct from last night, but how much of it do you go, hey, man, every now and then you just got to look at the other team and tip your cap and go, you dudes were on tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much video of the press conferences has been out there, but and how much people have actually seen, like, Lamont's reaction and the players' reaction by their face. But, after the game, it was almost like they were just kind of laughing. It's like, what the heck do you do? It's just one of those days, and sometimes they're in your favor and sometimes they're not, and it wasn't. And I don't think it's going to be a problem for them to shrug this one off. It happens. It happened to Auburn last week. I mean, that was something that I think it was Michi pointed out, either Michi or BJ after the game. I mean, they just went on the road and got smoked by Florida by 30 points, and they came back and did what they did to South Carolina. So, it happens from time to time. It stinks when it does. No fun to live through or watch or whatever else. But I think there's one that they'll be able to forget about pretty easily.
Hey, John Whittle with us from the Big Spur, talking Gamecocks on the halftime show in the game. It only counts as one, John. I've said it all day. Whether you get beat by 1 or 101, it only counts as one. You just shake it off and you move forward. You got LSU coming in. They've been struggling and scuffling this year. They're coming to your place. You can just get yourself back together and go get right this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it is. And South Carolina's been really good at home for the most part, apart from shooting some free throws against Georgia, a month and a half ago or whenever it was. And you've played well all year. There's no sense in thinking that Saturday won't be a bounce back day. You've been playing on Tuesday all year instead of Wednesday, and you get home at last night well after midnight, so it's a little bit of a shorter turnaround. But I don't feel like this isn't something this team can't handle, both from a turnaround standpoint and also a talent level standpoint.
Yeah, John, the last time they had, an issue was that second half in Tuscaloosa, and everybody's like, well, how are they going to bounce back from that? Well, they only lost one game since then and just lost their 7-game win streak. I think they bounced back okay from that, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And there hasn't been a ton of adversity this year, but when there has been some, they've responded to it pretty well, and that's part of having an older team. And, that was obviously Lamont Paris's big deal this offseason was to get a little bit older, more mature, more experienced. And, that's what happened. So the highs and lows of the season don't really affect those guys as much as maybe some others. And, you've got some maturity in your returners, not just your portal guys. So, Colin Murray-Boyle's a very mature freshman. I don't worry about these guys not being able to handle something like this.
John Whittle with us from the Big Spur, hanging out now. Are you still at Auburn? Because there's so many cool things to do in Auburn. I mean, you probably didn't want to leave.
I actually like Auburn. Auburn's one of my favorite road trips of the year. But I'm also I'm a late night guy. So after the game last night, I hopped in the car and drove back. So that's just kind of the way I roll.
So what time did you get back? What time did you get back?
Pulled into the driveway at 4 o'clock on the dot.
You are a maniac.
So got up, did a little work this morning, headed on over to see Mark Kingston and Eli Jones and Cole Messina over at the ball field, and we're ready to rock this afternoon for a little bit more.
And I'm going to give you a couple. Speaking of that, and thank you for the transition. I appreciate it, my friend. John Whittle with us, Big Spur. Now we'll talk real quick about Gamecock baseball. The rotation comes out with Eli Jones Friday, Dylan Eskew Saturday, Roman Kimball Sunday. Your thoughts?
Not too surprising, to be honest with you. I mean, there were really 4 guys in the mix for opening weekend starts, and you named 3 of them, and the fourth being Matthew Becker. And, he left the scrimmage on Saturday with a little bit of a lat issue, which was very similar to what Roman had the week before. So, Matthew's probably not going to pitch this weekend. There's 2 midweek games next week as he kind of recovers from that. So, when he wasn't able to go this weekend, it made the decision really, really easy for the coaching staff to go with what they went with. And, those 4 guys are all, weekend starter capable. I think you might see some evolution over the course of the season. I mean, Roman Kimball has the stuff to be a Friday guy. So does Eli Jones. Dylan Eskew certainly deserves to be in the mix from a rotation standpoint. So I don't think this is the only rotation you're going to see this year, but it's a good starting point for the Gamecocks. And, Eli's been the best out of all those guys. He's the most experienced out of all those guys. He certainly deserves the ball. Dylan Eskew's been pretty close in terms of how he's performed. He definitely deserves that Saturday role, and Roman, maybe has the most upside and high-end talent, high-end ceiling of any guy on the staff. So, certainly look forward to seeing him pitch in a real game for the first time since he was in the College World Series in 2022 back with Notre Dame.
All right, last thing for you in our final minute here, John Whittle, Big Spur. All right, everyday lineup. What are your thoughts going into Friday? Who has really gained some traction? Who might be surprising us moving forward as the season starts offensively?
That's a great question. I mean, there's so much over there. I mean, Cole Messina's had an incredible preseason coming into this. I think he's primed for a huge year. I mean, that's a pretty sturdy limb I'm going out on right there to talk about him. But he's just played so well. I think there's a solid chance you see Ethan Petrie start at first base a little bit this weekend with Gavin Casas and Tyler Causey both nursing injuries. So that may take a few folks off guard, but he's certainly going to be out there in some capacity, whether it's first base or right field. But I feel pretty good about where this lineup is going into the season. There's a lot of depth, a lot of different options out there for Coach Kingston to have to sort through. And I think the freshman to keep an eye on from an offensive standpoint is Ryan Bakes. He really hits, and he may not be an everyday starter right now, but he can start in left field, can DH. He's somebody kind of off the radar for folks to keep an eye on.
John Whittle, Big Spur, writing about the Gamecocks, basketball, baseball. We just found out John likes driving overnight when it's dark, so you need a package delivered. Call John. Maybe he'll take it somewhere for you overnight.
For the right price, I'll certainly do it.
Hey, we appreciate you always, man. Thanks, bud.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Terry.
All right, we'll see you, pal. All right, that's John Whittle, Big Spur. We'll get back in here. Today is February 15th. And what is that day, Tyler?
Of course, it's the greatest day in the history of the world.
That's next, brought to you by 1-800-GOT-JUNK on the halftime show here on the game. Time for the greatest day in the history of the world here on the Halftime Show, brought to you by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. All right, Tyler Head. On this day in 1978, a dude named Leon Spinks won the Olympic gold medal, light heavyweight. Spinks won the Olympic gold medal. Moved up to the heavyweight division, or became a heavyweight when he turned pro.
Yep.
Had very few career fights. Fought Muhammad Ali, was on CBS when I was a kid. Spinks beat Ali in a 15-round split decision. Took the heavyweight title in Vegas. Then Ali got a rematch later and beat Spinks. Now, a lot of folks who live on conspiracy theory think that it was set up for Spinks to win the title from Ali because, again, Spinks was an Olympian.
Yep.
Feel-good story, underdog, blah, blah, blah. Very popular because of his gold medal in the Olympics. And then Ali would take the title back.
Right.
Now, again, conspiracy theorists believe that.
There's been conspiracy in sports since the beginning.
Especially boxing.
Nothing else is taken at face value.
Boxing is so filled with conspiracy theory. Now, I'll be honest with you. If we talk about, being able to manipulate sporting events, boxing is one. Again, today it's tough to manipulate anything because nobody can keep a secret.
Sure.
Everybody yaps. But back in the day, it would have been easier to fix fights, manipulate fights, whatever.
Sure.
Because you had so few people involved in the actual deal. And back then, if you offered, these guys aren't making the purses they make today.
Right.
So if somebody offered you a good amount of dough to, hey, you need to fall down. But there was a big conspiracy theory about that back in the day that basically was set up for Spinks to win.
Right.
Feel-good story, Olympian, blah, blah, gold medal, and then Ali comes back and wins the second one.
Right.
That was 1978 when Spinks beats Muhammad Ali. By the way, that 1976 Olympic boxing team, 5 gold medalists from that team, looked at as possibly the greatest Olympic boxing team from the U.S. in history. And a few of those guys went on to have really good careers. The Spinks brothers. I mean, Leon didn't have a great career professionally. Michael Spinks did. Sugar Ray Leonard had a great career. I'm trying to think of the other guys. Oh, geez, I'm blanking. Oh, Howard Davis, who everybody thought was going to be really good. He was quick.
Right.
He didn't have as good a career as everybody thought. And then there was a lighter weight. Oh, what was his name? Randolph. The other guy, he won a title. I think he was okay as a pro, but they had it was a gigantic moment for America in the Olympics. But America used to be great in boxing.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean, Muhammad Ali won a gold medal. George Foreman won the gold medal. I mean, you had those 5 gold medalists there. I mean, you had a lot of gold medals hung around the necks of U.S. Olympic boxers for a long time. It's just not the same. Boxing's not what it was in this country, and all the upper level athletes today don't want to box. Ready?
Right.
I want to go play basketball. I want to get punched in the face.
Yeah. Well, and the guaranteed contracts you have in basketball now, where my favorite running joke is every time the trade deadline comes up and you have like so-and-so went to the Heat for $17 million a year. I'm like, I've never heard of that person in my life. And he's probably going to sit on the bench the entire time, but good for him.
Making a ton of loot. Again, I would pick that over people punching me in the face.
That's right.
But anyway, so that was Leon Spinks' day in 1978. Another Wayne Gretzky moment, 1980. Gretzky ties the NHL record with 7 assists in a game and sets a scoring record for first-year players in Edmonton's 8-2 win over Washington. Just the other day, he had the other 7-assist game.
When was the last time we didn't have a Gretzky on this greatest day in the history of the world?
His offensive records are just vile.
It's also, when we look at other sports, baseball, football, basketball, there's always like this debate. Who the greatest is? Is it LeBron? Is it MJ? Is it, is it Joe Montana? Is it Tom Brady? Is it going to be Patrick Mahomes? But like, definitively with hockey, it's like everybody just knows it's Wayne Gretzky, and there's no debating that.
I mean, if you look at Wayne Gretzky's stats and numbers, I'm Googling this right now with Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky won, I think, 500 MVP awards in the NHL. And I want to look at this really quick to make sure I get it right, because it's unbelievable.
Right.
When you hear this, just how many MVP awards Wayne Gretzky won in his career. I think at some point it was like 9 in a row.
Good Lord.
He won the MVP award, which is the Hart Trophy,
Yep.
9 times. I think they were all in a row, or 8 were in a row, or something like that. Again, my top of my head doesn't work as good as it used to, but
That's okay.
think about that. 9 MVP awards. Run that through your skull real quick.
I don't think that's going to be replicated.
No. 1986, a crowd of 44,180, at the time the largest to attend an NBA game, turned out the Pontiac Silverdome to see the Detroit Pistons beat the 76ers in overtime. I'm thinking 44,000 people total this year haven't gone to a Pistons game.
I think 44,000 people in the state of Michigan are aware the Pistons are still playing.
It's been so bad.
Were you following that thing? Because they have Wingstop is like their like sponsor for their into the game graphic or something like that, to where like the way it's positioned, it always looks like they're playing them with the way their logo is in the graphic. And like when they were on that long losing streak, it's like, oh, lost another one to Wingstop. When they finally broke through and won, at the end of December, I think it was, when they finally broke through and won, it was like 27, 28 games, like unreal. Being a Detroit sports fan, at least this year you had the Lions do what they did. Because if you're hanging your hat on counting on the Pistons, I'm sorry to tell you, that's not going to work out too well.
Besides the Lions, things are rough right now in Detroit.
Is the Silverdome still there? Or they already
it's gone.
tear that down? I know it sat there in ruins for
I think it's imploded.
forever.
I could be wrong. That thing. Ugh. All right, 1994, Kentucky makes one of the greatest comebacks in college basketball history. Trailing LSU, with 15 and a half minutes to go, Kentucky trailed LSU by 31 points and came back and won the game. Wow. How crazy is that? I remember that. It was nuts. All right, here's one. 1995, Charlie Standish sets a PBA record by rolling 3 perfect games in the first round of the Peoria Open. Standish rolls 300s in the second, fourth, and sixth games of a 6-game round. 1 point, had 23 consecutive strikes. Wow. You ever roll a 300 game in bowling?
I have not. You ever watched professional bowling on TV?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know they have overtime?
Oh, yeah.
I came across that the other weekend. I was like, there's overtime in bowling?
I remember when I was younger, it was a big thing on ABC's Wild World of Sports, the PBA bowling. They would have the Opens, the championships, and everything. You see, bowling was a thing. Now, again, a 300 game, I think I had a 300 set.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. I bowled duck pins. Now, duck pins are a thing in the Northeast.
Okay.
In the East Coast. It's a little small ball. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. When I was a kid, I did a year of duck pin league, and 2 years, because the second year I got asked to leave after I got mad and threw the ball overhand. I was a little intense that day.
Probably shouldn't do that.
They frowned upon that, Tyler. They told me I can leave the building and never come back. And I did a couple years of 10 pins, but man, 300 games. Crazy. Before we get out of here on the greatest day in the history of the world, I got one more, and then we're going to hit Tyler's wheelhouse.
Okay.
This year in 2000, Martin Brodeur becomes the first goaltender in NHL history to get credit for a game-winning goal in the New Jersey 3-2 win over Philadelphia. Basically, empty netter, bam, hits it down the ice, if I remember correctly.
Right.
That's what Martin Brodeur did. I think that's what happened. But Brodeur, goalies score every now and then. Again, usually it's an empty netter down the ice, but sure. Martin Brodeur gets credit for the game-winning goal. All right. We got 2 of them for you here, bub.
All right.
1998. Who won the Daytona 500? This is a gimme.
That'd be Dale Earnhardt. Perhaps one of the greatest calls in racing history. 20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration. Dale Earnhardt comes to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500. Finally, Mike Joy on CBS.
Do you know he ended a 59-race winless streak?
I do.
Yep. And by the way, what year of that was NASCAR? They were celebrating
the 50th anniversary.
Look at you.
Yep.
And last one for you. This happened in 2004.
His son wins the Daytona 500.
I'm telling you, you need to go on Jeopardy, NASCAR Jeopardy. You would win some serious money.
Yeah. The final 120 laps of that race, final 300 miles went green all the way.
Did it really?
Very strung out. Yes, it did.
Seriously?
Yep. And then, so the Busch Series race the day before got rained out. So on Monday, they ran the rest of the Busch race, and he won that too.
All right, in the last couple seconds, who'd he beat?
In the Daytona 500, Tony Stewart was 3rd. Scott Wimmer was 4th. Kurt Busch was a lap down, but hung with him the entire last segment, drafting with him. He was a lap down.
It says here when he took the lead, he blew past Tony Stewart to take the lead.
And he and Stewart used to draft really well at the super speedway. So he finished 2nd. Scott Wimmer finished 3rd.
You are just ridiculous. Very impressive, bub. All right, we'll come back in. That's the greatest day in the history of the world. Brought to you by or sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We'll come back. Firehouse Sub text the hour 803-404-6100. Also, we'll yip with Jay Phillips for a couple seconds as well in the halftime show here on the game. Time to get our Firehouse sub-text of the hour at 803-404-6100. Hit me. What you got there, Tyler? Hit.
Yeah, so Michael weighs in. He says, if I'm Beamer, I'm calling Teasley into the office and I'm moving him to tight end and giving Elliott the offensive line. He's a great talent evaluator and can develop linemen. That's what he was doing for a lot of the time that he was here previously at South Carolina when he was under both Coach Spurrier and Coach Muschamp working with the offensive line.
Here's the offensive line coach. And I get where the texture's going because I was thinking, too, about, you got Lonnie Teasley's the offensive line coach. But, again, that was Elliott's specialty. But being the run game coordinator, he's also going to be working with the offensive line coach. And I'm sure Elliott will have his input on the offensive line. So I get where the texture's going because of Elliott's past.
And, again, that's why it's so good to have somebody like him that has done so many different things, being in that role of a run game coordinator where he's going to get to work with multiple facets of the offense, including, of course, being the tight ends coach as well. So he's going to have his fingerprints on just about every area of this offense in some degree, which is good because, again, he's kind of been there and done that and seen it from a head coach's perspective and can probably offer a lot of good insight.
All right, so also we didn't get to a couple things we didn't get to on the show. We'll pop real fast. We were talking about, remember, we had a lot of stuff about Lamont Paris yesterday.
Yep.
The Ohio State job. Chris Holtmann gets bounced at Ohio State. All the list of early candidates come out. Lamont Paris's name has been on the list. And again, that naturally brings, concern, fear, whatever to a fan base where they're going, hey, South Carolina basketball, it's been fun this year. We like this. We don't want to see this guy go. I understand when you give an extension this early in the game, you sometimes can set yourself up for the bad side, which is Will Muschamp. Right. I get it. That's why you got to sit and say, all right, we've been watching this guy every day. We see what he does. We see his process. We see how he, his leadership, his culture. If you feel like this is the guy that's going to be able to, and not replicate this exactly every year, but make South Carolina a good basketball program.
Right.
Then you go for it. Yeah, you're taking a bit of a chance that this isn't an outlier. Sure you are, but you go for it. Real quick, though, if you look at this job opening and some of the candidates that I've been looking at and reading about, there's no offense to Lamont Paris. My first phone call is to Sean Miller at Xavier. Are you interested in Ohio State? I mean, I'm also talking to Dusty May at Florida Atlantic, who just went to the Final Four. I'm looking at, there's rumblings that Greg McDermott might be ready to move on from Creighton. Now, McDermott has been to an Elite Eight, never a Final Four. But he's won a ton of games. I mean, there are guys out there. Mick Cronin, I hear you. We're talking about the UCLA NIL situation.
Sure.
Mick Cronin is grumbling at UCLA. There are guys with better resumes right now than Lamont that I think Ohio State, according to sources and rumors, might reach out to. Yeah. Lamont's on the list. It doesn't mean that the day the season ends, Lamont Paris is taken off to Ohio State.
Sure, and he gets put on that list very quickly because, again, of all of his ties, state of Ohio, to the Big Ten, all that kind of stuff. It makes a lot of sense that he would at least be considered. That doesn't mean he's their number one candidate. It doesn't mean he'll even get an interview or anything like that. But when you think about a short list of guys that would make sense going to that job, Lamont Paris does make sense. But, again, he's probably not. He may not be the top guy on their list.
No, and what this does, though, it helps Lamont Paris maybe get a contract extension with more dough.
That being said, Lamont Paris, and we end up having a successful season as we're seeing when it's all said and done. That doesn't mean other places might not court him as being their head coach or something like that because, again, you don't want South Carolina to be a stepping stone, but if he feels like he can go make better money somewhere else and have a better gig, then he might do that.
Yeah, what you want, if you're Lamont Paris, what you want, obviously you want a raise, who doesn't, and you want to know you're going to have the opportunity, the resources given to you to win.
Right.
And if South Carolina gives him that raise and the extension, and he likes where everything's going with NIL and things of that nature,
right?
He just gets more money, stays at South Carolina.
Sure.
And the last thing, not to show on a downer, but what happened in Kansas City obviously is horrific and tragic and awful. And all I can say is this: smarter people than me need to figure this out.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't do politics here. I don't want to talk about politics, but there are a lot of smart folks in this country. Somebody's got to figure this out because you should be able to go to a parade, drop your kid off at school, go to a mall, go to a movie without the concern of being shot.
Right. For an event that's supposed to be celebrating something, everybody having a good time, being joyful. It's horrible to hear about that. I forget the guy's name, but the guy that tackled the shooter that prevented that from being even worse than it could have been. Shout out to that guy,
Yes.
Hero. He was on the Kansas City news stations this morning. Like, again, maybe prevented for a lot of other people from getting hurt.
Yeah, it just, again, this is, and we see this happening in our country, and it's always the same process. Oh my gosh, this is terrible, awful, it's tragic, and we go through the same things, and nothing ever changes.
Right.
And again, not talking politics. I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Common
there
sense.
A lot of layers here, Tyler, that need to be fixed.
Sure.
Not just one. There's a lot of layers, but smart people have to get together and this has to end.
Right.
This has to end. All right, fine job, my friend.
Thank you.
Good job today. Jay and Elijah with the post-game show coming in next. They will be talking about Sean Elliott coming back to South Carolina. Also, the game last night against Auburn and the game tonight for the women against Tennessee. We'll do this again tomorrow, noon, with our special opening day halftime show with myself and Jay and Tyler on the game. 803-875-MENS. Look, if you're not sleeping, you just don't feel right, you have a lack of drive in life in every way possible, you're not strong anymore at the gym, you can't lift like you used to, your recovery's terrible, you got brain fog, whatever it is, you don't feel right. Call the men's clinic, see if it's just low testosterone. It's that easy. And if it is low T, what they're going to do is put you on a program specifically designed for